Yay, okay, cool. This is working, perfect. So, like mentioned, hi, I'm Tracy. This is really, really exciting to me to be here. Not only has giving a keynote has been on my bucket list for a really, really long time. And giving a keynote at a PyCon is definitely one-upping that. Not only that, this summer I started the process of moving from California to Canada. Turns out that was a really good decision to start that early. So, it's really great to be here and giving this talk in my new home. I'm just so excited to be here. Okay, cool. I'm lucky to speak at a lot of conferences. This year, I kind of just threw myself into it, and I've been doing a lot of conference speaking, and it's been really awesome. Is that cutting out for anyone? Okay, cool. All right. It's been really awesome to be able to travel and speak at a lot of conferences. And a funny thing happened in August. I was at 2 separate conferences, like completely different conferences. There are different topics, and this event happened twice, and it really stuck out in my brain and kind of made me think and also be a little frustrated. The guy would sit next to me, and out of nowhere, it's like he could smell Django on me. Out of nowhere, he's like, "Man, freaking hate frameworks. It makes people terrible programmers." Like out of nowhere, I wasn't talking about Django. I was just sitting there, and these people decided to talk about this to me. And it's just like, come on, really? There's more to it. I'm a little bit biased because I do Django. I've written a couple books on Django, so I'm a little bit biased when it comes to this topic. But it's not just about me. There's a larger. Okay, there's a lot. There's more to it than just me that annoys me. More to it than just this implication that I'm a bad programmer. And I'm really excited to be here and kind of talk about how this relates to my background and kind of what I've been doing and why statements like that really annoy me. Some of you might already know the story about me jumping into programming. I've talked a lot about my process as a designer, learning Django and starting a startup and writing these books. But my story actually starts a lot earlier than that. There's a big piece of my road to programming that I haven't spoken about before publicly or in writing. So with further ado, let's get the larger story of my rocky road to programming. This is the rocky road that I grew up on. I grew up in a really rural area in California. And this is Google Street View. The Google Street View car wouldn't even go down that dirt road, so I don't have a picture of the house I grew up in. This is really in the middle of nowhere. And I was lucky to have a couple of family members that were in tech. I've always had a computer, and I'm really, really lucky to have always had that. My grandfather worked at IBM for over 50 years. And had a couple of chips named after him. And I had an uncle on the other side of my family that also worked in tech and startups. So I've always had a computer from those, giant floppy disk computers. That's, instead of going outside and playing in the woods, why do that? I stayed inside playing on computers. So that's really what kind of led me, the start of me jumping into technology. Now, when the internet started happening, I was also lucky to get a 14.4K modem, and it really started to get me interested in the internet, and this is like the fledgling crazy frames of internet. And again, instead of going out and playing outside and running in the trees and the woods and whatnot, I got interested in building websites. So, websites with frames in Notepad. This is actually the website I used. I went and dug it up because I always remember Annabella's HTML help as the website I used to learn how to do frame-based websites. And this is taken from Wayback Machine, which is why it has no images. But this is really where I started playing around with websites. And this is when I was 11, so 1995 or so. I started building websites. This is actually something I built in high school. It's still up. Thank you, Angel Fire. Please don't look at it. Please don't go find it. But it's still there. And I like the little undefined on top, if you can see it. I don't know why that's there. But I started building websites when I was in middle school, and I built so many websites. This is a website dedicated to the author Terry Brooks. I was obsessed with Terry Brooks, and I was part of the online community of Terry Brooks fans where we had little chat rooms, and we did like online role playing, and I built a website. And this website was actually in the running at the time to be one of the official Terry Brooks websites, because that was kind of starting to be a thing, to have like an official website. And it was me and a few others that had Terry Brooks websites. So I was actually in the running to be his official website person at like 13. And I had websites, which I couldn't find this, but I had a website dedicated to the game Creatures. Does anyone remember the game Creatures? Yeah. You could like mod your creatures. And so I did a website collecting all the mods for this game. All the little like different sprites you can use in your creatures. And I had this website up. I think it was like Tracy's Creatures page and whatnot. I did websites also in school because a teacher would be like, okay, write a report on so-and-so. And instead of like, getting a binder out and writing pages of information, I would make a website and have like a couple different tabs in the website, and I would have like a paragraph of information, like way less information than if it was actually presented in a report format. But without fail, the teacher would be like, whoa, a website, Yeah, I was really into websites. And I had some people. I was really close with my best friend in high school. He was pretty much the top programmer in our school. He was teaching our computer teacher C++, and he did all sorts of like crazy programming things. But my thing was really websites, and I loved working with websites. This is actually just for the sake of finding and digging up all these old websites I did. This is another website of mine that's still on the internet, and that's actually from college. But look at these frame-based websites. Look at how the web used to look. So I love websites. I still do. Still what I do. And when I graduated high school, I thought, well, I love computers. I love working on computers. I love websites. And even though I didn't really do any programming, I thought naturally that I should get a computer science degree. So I went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo in Central California, go Cal Poly, and I got into their computer science program. And their computer science program is actually pretty excellent. Cal Poly is a really, really good engineering school in California. Also, it's freaking gorgeous up there. And I was really lucky to be able to go here for computer science. So, Computer Science 101. This is literally day one, hour one of university for me. And again, super excited about being in college and university. I'm super excited to be in computer science. So I went to this class and I sat down and just like, ooh, I'm ready. And very quickly during this lecture, my face transformed into this. I had no idea what the professor was talking about. I don't remember exactly what he said anymore, but I remember the feeling very, very clearly, this feeling of being completely out of place. I think he was talking a lot about like the architecture of computers and maybe programming, maybe history of programming, and I'm sitting there going like, am I in the wrong place? I felt like I missed a class before this. This is, again, the first quarter of school, my first day, my first hour, and I was already feeling completely lost. Like I didn't know if I had missed a class that summer or if there was some kind of requirement that I missed. And there's other people in the classroom that are just like nodding along. And I'm just in the back just feeling completely out of place. And I ran up to that professor afterwards and I was like, what's going on? Like I thought this was a beginner class. I have no idea what's going on. I'm really lost. And he's like, it's okay. You're in the right place. Just chill out. It'll get better. Unfortunately, it didn't really get better for me moving on. That first hour is kind of an indication for how the rest of my computer science career went. Now, one of the problems was that Cal Poly at the time was teaching Java as intro to programming. And for me, Java did not jive whatsoever. I believe now they do Python. I need to check that. But at the time, it was Java. And it was not fun for me. I passed that 101 class, barely. The 102 class, Cal Poly was in quarters. Most schools are in semesters. Cal Poly did fall, winter, spring. So this is winter quarter for me, and I did the 102 class. And the 102 class started introducing the concept of GUIs. And my brain, I was like, woo, I understand this. This is like websites. You press a button and something happens. And I actually started having fun. Like the 101 class did not have fun. 102 started having fun, starting to feel like maybe I can get this. And then 103, spring quarter, Fundamentals of Computer Science 3. This class, as compared to the other classes, largely dealt with theory. And that was my biggest problem. Like one of the things we did in the class was take sorting methods and reverse engineer them. We had to write this giant paper going over all these sorting methods, reverse engineering them, creating graphs and tracking how well they're doing. I had a partner in the class, and I distinctly remember the partner going up to me and being like, if you don't understand anything, don't do it, come to me first. Like he was so terrified that I was going to give him a bad grade because he knew that I was not understanding, was not being a great programmer. One project had a rubric, and naturally, when you get a project and it says this is worth 40%, this is worth 30%, et cetera, and so forth, you focus on the things that are worth more. And again, I was struggling in this class. I was having a really hard time conceptualizing what was going on underneath. I didn't really understand this theory and reverse engineering and all this other stuff that we were doing in this class. And I was trying really hard. But this one project, of course, was running out of time, wasn't getting it. So, of course, I focused on the things that are worth more. And what happened was I got my project back, and the project was graded with a different rubric. Things that I thought were worth less were worth more, et cetera, and so forth. So I did what's natural. Like, I emailed the professor, and I said, hey, you said, it was going to be worth this much in this rubric, and you changed it to this, so can I have this other rubric back? That seems really natural that anyone would do, especially if you're going to get a higher grade. A lot of things were building up for my experience in computer science. It's like this kind of slow doom, this feeling of not belonging, not understanding what was going on in programming. But this event really changed my view completely. The professor emailed me back and he said, yes, he'll change my grade to what was the rubric. But then he went on a multi-paragraph rant about how lazy I was and how I wasn't trying and how I was just trying to skate my way through computer science, how I was just trying to skate my way through life. I need to actually study. It was devastating. To have, I was going to mentoring sessions. I was going to, I had tutors. I just simply wasn't getting computer science. And this professor just kind of ripped my heart out. And that was the moment I quit computer science. I checked out. I set it up so, obviously it wasn't immediate, but that was when I started looking into changing my major. I switched over to art, which is like the farthest you can get away from programming. I was completely done. I thought I loved computers, but I went to art, and I decided that I was going to become a package designer. I was going to do everything that's, real objects, no more computers, except for, designing on the computer. And I was completely done, absolutely done with computer science. The kind of things the universe kind of pushed me back into being in computers full time because, hey, I was background in websites, and a friend of mine was running a startup. I was in school, needed a job. My friend said, hey, you need a web designer. Started working with them, literally a startup in a garage, and it blew up into an actual company in the Bay Area. So I became their web designer. That was me with my goatee. The thing is I was so terrified of programming that you say as a web designer, usually web designers are HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But I was only HTML and CSS. I wouldn't even touch JavaScript. There was someone else in the company that did all JavaScript. Because the mere fact that JavaScript had the word Java in it, and it had curly braces, Like, I was traumatized. This could have been the end of my story. I could have been one of the many people who tried to learn programming and tried to get a computer science degree and ended up dropping out. I thought I hated programming. I thought that I was a terrible programmer, and I wanted nothing to do with it. So I'm going to pause my story for just a moment, just kind of talk about the bigger picture, because I think this story and this experience happens probably to a lot of people around the world. Specifically, every gender, but this probably happens a lot with women in tech. And, there's a lot of these really sad stats when you hear about women in university jumping through computer science, like that the amount of women in computer science have dropped from 37% to 17% in recent years. And there's stats that say about women in computer science related professions, and that's dropped from 35 to 25%. When I was looking at these stats, there's also something else that I thought was kind of fascinating. When it comes to the way to being like this feeling of being comfortable in computer science and feeling included. There was this little anecdote by from the University of California at Berkeley that changed their class name from Introduction to Symbolic Programming, and they changed it to The Beauty and Joy of Computing. And the amount of women in the class outnumbered men. So I think that's fascinating. That's a really interesting little anecdote. And this feeling, other than that whole professor business, this feeling of not understanding computer science in university, not feeling like that was something my brain, like the theory and whatnot, wasn't something that my brain really wanted to do. Feeling like it was going down this one path when I was interested in another path. This little anecdote was find really fascinating, and I wonder if that would have changed a little bit my overall experience in university. So while there are many reasons why women drop out of computer science, from being exposed to computers at a later age, from sexism, from students, professors, my own particular problem was really this way that computer science was taught. Again, ignoring that one moment with that professor where I just completely checked out. But it was something that was building up over time, this feeling of I'm interested in computers and technology in one way, but this university education was not teaching that way. They were teaching this one path. And it wasn't the best way for me to learn. And I wouldn't have realized that had not the following series of events occurred. So back to my story. Enter Python. Ta-da! So much better in Java, guys. Oh my God, at least for me. So this is the story that you might know. This is the story I have told. I usually tell the story. I was a designer, didn't know how to program. I learned Python. Now you know the whole backstory there about why I didn't know programming. 7 or so years ago, I was working at that startup, left that startup, and I was in the Bay Area where everyone's doing startups and their own startups and growing through Y Combinator and whatnot. And I got the idea in my head that I wanted to launch my own startup. But because I was absolutely terrified of programming and refused to do any sort of programming, the natural thing to do when you have an idea is to go find your technical co-founder. So I wrote this post. It got big on Hacker News. I was known as the weddings person on Hacker News for a while. I got a bunch of people emailing me to be my co-founder. It was pretty fabulous. Didn't work out, actually. I started working with someone, kind of blew up in my face. And then I was left with this idea I still wanted to build. I'd gone through this process of trying to find a technical co-founder to work with me and do the programming for me, and that didn't work out. So I looked at my past and how much I hated programming, how much I felt burned by the process of learning programming. And I looked at my future and how much I wanted to launch a startup and launch my own project. And the last piece of the puzzle was meeting this guy, who's in the front row up here. This is Andrei Petrov. He has a talk immediately after mine, I believe, in this room. Now my husband, and he's pretty good at Python. So he said to me, probably in some way, shape, or form, you might have hated Java, but there's this thing called Python, so might as well, maybe try Python, and he can help me. And then there's also this thing called Django for beginners that he didn't have experience in, but knew that was for beginners, and I should try it out. So Django's magic, much maligned magic, this whole thing about hiding everything that's going on, glossing over all the technical details, all the the programming bits, and you're just building. That's exactly what I needed. Exactly what I needed. I'm still, to this day, fuzzy on what classes and methods are. Sorry. But Django enabled me to build something. It enabled me to get started with programming again, get started building websites, start using Python. And I didn't know why things were working, only that they were. And Django helped me build an interest in learning how to program again. So I built this website. It wasn't looking like this at the time, but this is the website I built. It's called Wedding Invite Love. It's a directory of wedding invitation designers. And then that directory I built got featured in a big, this is the Swiss Miss design blog, really big frickin' deal. And then I got into the designer fund in the Bay Area, and they invested in me. And then because I was in the designer fund, I got into 500 Startups Accelerator program as a solo founder. And I started writing a lot about my experience of learning how to learning Python and learning Django. So this post also went big on Hacker News and further cemented me as the weddings person of Hacker News. I wrote a lot about being a founder, wrote a lot about my experience building this company and working in a startup, which has been really, it's never actually taken off. It still exists. It hasn't taken off. It wasn't not like huge big deal, but really it's a dream job for me, just building this website and working on it. After working on Wedding Lovely, during working on Wedding Lovely, say 5 or so years in of working on this company, I started thinking about the way that Django was taught. And I had learned a lot. I was teaching myself Django as I was building this company. There'd be a new feature I wanted to add, and because I was the programmer, I had to go research how to build that feature. So I was teaching myself Django as I was building Wedding Lovely, learning more and more about Python and Django while building a startup. And as I figured things out and gone through a bunch of tutorials, I started thinking, why was it taught this way when it really should be taught this way? And I wasn't seeing tutorials being written. So that's how Hello Web App, my book series, came about. Wanted to teach Django in the way that I wished existed when I was first learning out how to use Django. Hello Web App is aimed towards people like me before, people who knew the front end, don't like programming or feel like they don't like programming, and just want to build a web app. They just want to build something that has a database and users and a login and whatnot. And I take that Django's magic and I kind of go to the extremes. Hello Web App doesn't teach you anything about programming. It just teaches you how to build a web app. And a lot of people don't like that. Those dudes at that conference, that's exactly what they're talking about. Someone reading Hello Web App is not going to be a programmer, but they're going to learn how to build a web app. It's pretty awesome looking. I'm pretty proud of it. I self-designed it. I self-published it. The books were fundraised on Kickstarter, which is one of the reasons why I feel so loved and welcomed by the Python and Django community, because largely the books were a success and we were self-published due to the amount of people that supported these Kickstarters. In the book, I've given workshops for this book all over the world, which has been a pretty amazing experience. This one's at Hackbright Academy. And to this day, Hello Web App in its various forms, it comes in ebook, paperback, video packages, it's on Amazon, it's on LeanPub and whatnot. In those various forms, there's been thousands of copies bought and and given away worldwide, which is kind of absolutely mind-blowing and amazing, and I'm so proud to have built this. So that's me in a nutshell. That is my full experience of learning how to program and how to work in the Django and Python community. And sometimes I want to go up to that professor and take my books to him, so just wave it in his face and be like, look at what you almost prevented me from doing. Like I almost ran away completely from programming because I was so terrified because of what you said in that email. And when I go to these conferences and people out of the blue are like, man, I freaking hate frameworks, makes me want to come on stage and tell my story about why I think frameworks are a good thing. I wouldn't be here without Django. Absolutely. I couldn't have started with Python. I mean, those dudes aren't wrong, though. I'm not a great programmer. I'm not really like a traditional programmer engineer at all. I would never be able to be hired at Google or Apple or anything, and I have no interest in working in those jobs either. I do want to learn more about programming, and about a year ago, somewhere around that time, I actually applied for Recurse Center. Recurse Center is a programmer's retreat. It's in New York City, and it's essentially this forget how long it is, maybe 6 weeks or something like that. This time where you just go with other programmers and you just teach yourself how to become a better programmer. You just want to focus on making yourself a better programmer. And I looked at this and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. I've only been doing Django through Wedding Lovely this whole time, also writing these books. And this would be a time for me to do a real retreat and actually learn how to be a good programmer. And even though I've done so much work in Wedding Lovely and working in frameworks, I had never written a straight Python program before at all. The thing with Recurse Center is that that's part of your application. You have to write a simple program and apply with that program. And that was absolutely terrifying. I had no idea how to work without a framework before, which is ridiculous. So I decided to build the example that they had on their website, which was build a tic-tac-toe program. And Andre, my husband, helped me out a lot because I didn't understand, I knew how to work with Python. It's a really nice language, but there's things like this that completely baffle me. But I built this little, I futzed around, I built this little tic-tac-toe program. Work. There we go. And it has a little bit of AI. You can, have a human player and a computer player, and it, you can choose which box you want to go in and play tic-tac-toe. And I built that. This is my first Python program ever. Unfortunately, I didn't get into Recurse Center. That was devastating. I really wish I could have gotten into that. But I really enjoyed building this program. But it's like computer science 101 stuff, right? This is 5 years into my journey. I'm not a great programmer. I enjoyed doing this, but I mean, to do it as a full-time job, it's not something I want to do. It's not my path. So I want to do a little bit of thank yous right here in this middle part, because there's been a few people that have helped me in this journey of being integrated in the Python and Django community without being, an engineer myself. Because when I was learning how to do Django, again, my husband does Python but doesn't know Django, and I tweeted out, oh, try and use this thing called Django. Does anyone have any advice? And the most amazing people offered help and advice when they hadn't even met me. Kenneth Love, I was going through his tutorial building a blog, and I was using that tutorial to build Wedding Invite Love. And he messaged me, again, never had met him before. He messaged me and said that I can add him on Gtalk and just ask him questions whenever. And I totally did. I asked him the stupidest questions. And it was the nicest thing for some stranger, this person who wrote this blog tutorial, to offer his help to me remotely. And another shout out in the very beginning was Noah, and he was in the Bay Area with me, and he offered, again, never met him before, but he offered to meet with me in a local co-working spot and show me some of the things that were in Django that I wouldn't know about. So he showed me things like Django packages and a bunch of other resources for me to learn Django. These two were like the start of making me feel welcome in this community. And now it feels like conferences like this, or DjangoCon, which I stole their image from their Flickr account, people in these communities, it's like going to these conferences is like going on a retreat with all my besties. Like, this is so cool. I love being here. I love being around all my friends. And I feel very supportive because, again, my books were kickstarted. People spent money on me, helping me build my little book empire. And there's just such amazing people in this community. But sometimes I'm reminded that I am judged about the path I've taken and the skills that I have and what I've decided to do in my journey. A few months ago, I was kicking around the idea of running an online course for Hello Web App. And I've given the books as a workshop at PyCon and DjangoCons, and usually they're like 3 hours. I'm actually going to stop doing that because 3 hours is, the first hour is just like, oh my God, why isn't Python working with Windows? And then you get like an hour and a half afterwards of like, oh, this is actually working, and then the workshop is over. So unfortunately, I'm not going to do workshops at programming conferences anymore unless they're full day. But I was kicking around this idea of doing an online, like 8 to 12 week online workshop. Not only would it allow me to work with people over a longer period of time, it also would help me bring in a little bit more income because, over the last 7 years, at the most I've ever made in those 7 years is $50,000, and usually I'm making around $25,000. This whole startup life, this whole book life has actually been a very, very low income endeavor. So I've been kicking around this idea of running an online workshop. I haven't done it yet due to time, something I might still do. And a lot of people aren't interested in paying for something like that, which is fine. This survey was really great for me to get responses from people who are on the Hello Web App mailing list, people who follow me on Twitter. And of course, when you do a public survey like this, you're not going to always, like 90% of the time, they're just wonderful, really nice, very supportive responses. And then there's ones that stick out. You can't read this. But this person said, level up your skills more before acting like your authority. My imposter syndrome can use a keyboard. Isn't that awesome? Just for the full picture of what they said. Also, if you're going to have a book for designers, consider showing more attractive web pages inside. Ouch. I'm a designer. Hopefully you can see I can do design in some way, shape, or form. This person is just mean. And just for, the sake of explaining what he's talking about, if you haven't seen Hello Web App, the examples in the book, I just use the system like font. I don't have any styling. When you're building your web app, you see it as if you're in a browser with no styling at all applied. I did that on purpose because I don't want to explain CSS or explain styling or muddy the information in there. And I don't want people who didn't understand the front end to feel turned off by the examples being prettier than the ones I had. So that was a very deliberate decision, and it kind of sucks that person brought that up. It kind of hurt my feelings. And I think about that comment a lot, especially when I'm at home and I'm starting to feel a little bit like an imposter. And I'm reminded that there's someone out there who thinks I'm an imposter too. The thing is I am an example. I have to remind myself that I'm an example of a programmer that took a different path. There's a lot of different paths that you can take when you learn how to do programming, and I'm on a different path than, say, the typical path of going in and being an engineer and being really a fantastic back-end programmer. That's not something I'm interested in. It's not something I'm doing. And I can be an authority with the skills I have. Take that, person. The industry we're in, the community we're in, not all programmers look the same. Not all programmers do the same thing. Not all programmers think the same way. Not all programmers are going down the same path. And that's really the key thing I wanted to bring up. The key thing I wanted to talk about here is, we've done a lot of work in terms of being accepting of people who look different, that think different. And I want to bring into this conversation this idea that there's different paths that we can take. There's different things that people can go into when they're learning how to program, when they're doing Python for the first time. There's a lot of different things that people can do and specialize in. And our ecosystem as a whole has been changing through the addition of frameworks and additions of different ways to bring people into programming. And to people who say Django is making people terrible programmers, there's a bigger picture that's happening. That's not exactly. Django's not teaching people to be better programmers. They're teaching people to learn programming and then go into different paths. So they talk about something nice. Go back into the bright, fuzzy, warm, fuzzy parts of our community. There's a lot of really cool things. Our industry has really been evolving in really, really great ways. Now, there's a survey by Stack Overflow that found that 2 out of 3 developers are self-taught, and that's really shows that the amount of information online, these guides and books and everything, the amount of information that people can use to teach themselves and don't have to go through university, that's really what's prompting this. And I stole this from Hacker News. Someone commented underneath that topic saying that it's not just 2 out of 3 developers are self-taught. It's really that 3 out of 3 developers are self-taught, but only 1/3 of them have a computer science degree. This is so cool how much information is on the internet and how much guides and how much tutorials and how many workshops and how many resources we have to help people come into technology and programming, and also bring more people into it and then help them grow in what they choose to do. Now, my specific goal with Hello Web App, my little niche that I'm focusing on, was to bring more designers and front-end developers into programming. And I wanted to help them learn in more of a GUI, visual, website-based way. The tutorials 7 years ago when I was learning Django were focusing on teaching programming the made the more traditional way, where you'd write a view and you go into your command line and you test it out, and then you go change your view, and then maybe later down the line you would bring it up into a website. And so Hello Web App does the website stuff first and makes everything look like a website, make it look very visual, and helps you see what you're building, but not really explain about how you're building it. And that's my little niche I'm in. And I think it's really cool to start seeing tutorials that focus on other niches for Python. Did you know that Python is used in typography? This is super, super cool to me, because it's hey, cool, let's bring more developers or more designers into using Python. Python is used in the major typography programs to build typefaces. So typographers are learning Python in order to better create typefaces, and that's so cool. We all know about Python in science. This is the other way people can use Python, but be in a completely different industry. This is really, kind of what's been happening, is that the more information, the more tutorials that are out there, the larger our pool of beginners has become. Okay, it's not just people going into university and then getting a computer science degree and then working with Python. We have this bigger pool of beginners. And people could look at this and say, okay, the pool is this big, and a certain amount are going to be bad programmers, and now we have a lot more beginners, and even if that certain amount stays the same percentage-wise, that means there are going to be way more bad programmers, and they can have this really weird and very pessimistic view of the industry. And this is actually what I'm excited about. This is actually what's going on, is that as our pool of beginners is getting larger, people are choosing where they want to go when they learn Python. They can go into engineering, they can go into web development, they can go into startups, documentation, they can go into multiple areas of these groups. The more people we have as beginners, the more of these individual pieces are going to grow and get more people into it. Someone could learn Python and not go into engineering, but there's going to be more people in engineering as we get more beginners. That all these pieces of the pie are going to get larger. And this has been the biggest criticism of Hello Web App, is if someone's looking at Hello Web App and they're looking at learning how to program as simply, we're going to make more engineers, then Hello Web App is a terrible, terrible book. Because again, I gloss over pretty much anything when it comes to programming. But if you look at Hello Web App as a way to introduce someone into programming, and get them to that success feeling as fast and as easy as possible, someone could read Hello Web App and then read something like 2 Scoops or go into computer science classes and start learning the best practices and the things they actually need to know to become a full-fledged engineer. But they also cannot do that. They can go and learn more about web app development, or they can say, okay, that's all I need to know and jump into these other areas. It is not just one path that someone needs to go on to. I'm hoping to make it easier for someone to jump into engineering, not just engineering, but these other paths as well. We can't force everyone just down this one path or expect that this is the only path that Python programmers need to go under. We're not all going to be engineers. We're not all going to be learning the same things or interested in the same thing. Not all beginners are going to be the same. Now, a lovely, wonderful friend of mine who is here, can't see him right now, but made me laugh because he was working on his PyCon Canada presentation. And he was like, oh, you're a beginner. Can I run it by you? But his topic was actually something I'm totally not interested in. Because even though I'm technically a beginner in that way, that's not the path I'm on. Personally, for me, I like being very broad with very shallow information. And his presentation is really for someone who wants to be deep dive into one area. I'm on a different path. That's not the path that I'm interested in. I'm not just a beginner going down that one, not all beginners are going to do or be interested in the same thing. So, a lot of this presentation is celebration, and I'm really happy about how our community has evolved over time. But, all these presentations, there should be a little bit of what we can do better. And I'm going to steal this from Jacob Kaplan-Moss. And if you have not seen Jacob's amazing keynote at PyCon 2015, he talks about being a mediocre programmer, and it's fabulous. It is a great keynote. I kind of wish I could just plunk him here and then run away, and he could just do the rest of the talk for me, because it's such a good presentation. And he talks about how when you look at everyone as a whole and the amount of experience that they have, the vast majority of us are going to be under that large part of that bell curve. And there's not going to be rock stars. Not everyone's going to be a rock star or a ninja. No, we're never going to have that as the large group of people. The vast majority of us are going to be average or mediocre. This applies also for these people going on their different paths. We're not all going to be just rock star engineers. So let's embrace the mediocre programmer. This one's kind of specific, but I would like to see, I did a little rant about the whole beginner thing. When you go to conferences or even tutorials online, you see things that say, oh, this is a beginner tutorial, this is an intermediate tutorial, this is an advanced tutorial. But this is implying that someone who is a beginner should, beginners naturally want to advance over to intermediate. And it's kind of implying one path. Something like this, I'd like to see something more like this. Something that says that you can be a beginner, you're a beginner in deployment, or you can beginner, the topic is focused on web apps or on data science or deployment or something like that. Accepting that not all beginners are going to be interested in intermediate deployment. Maybe they're only interested in web apps. And adding these little, this extra bit of categories is going to be make it more inclusive for people looking for different paths. And done a lot of good work in here, but I'd like to see more tutorials and guides that are aimed at niches. Not every tutorial has to be one size fits all. We have so many different types of programmers out there, or so many different types of people who are looking to get into programming, artists, writers, etc. And I'd like to see more guides and tutorials and presentations that are aiming at these certain groups of people, rather than say, hey, you want to learn Django? I want to see something a little bit more specific. And very importantly, you can write a tutorial even feel like a beginner. Because again, there's someone out there, again, who doesn't think I'm an authority and I shouldn't be writing about Hello Web App, but I am. If you're out there and you have a certain background, any kind of background, writing about your experience learning something, adding your perspective, making sure there's if you're adding more guides and tutorials using your perspective, the more diverse our tutorials are going to be, and the more we're going to be bringing more people into our ecosystem. More voices and more diversity of guides and tutorials are needed, and you can write those things as a beginner, because beginner voices are actually probably more necessary than experts, because when you're an expert, you kind of forget the beginner mindset. So, if there's a voice that says, I can't write about this because I'm not an expert, ignore that voice, ignore those commenters on your surveys, and write anyways. Oh, in conclusion, the power of our community lies within its diversity. Not just accepting that people can look different, but that they can do different things. We can use Python and programming and computers to empower people to learn something new faster, get them into technology, and allow them to try different things. And then they can land in something that they love. The beginners that we teach today are not only our future engineers, but our future scientists, our future typographers, future documentarians, our future open source contributors, our future engineers, and our future startup founders. I'm really excited about all the progress we've made in this community, and I'm really excited to be a part of this community. And I really look forward to watching us grow, and I hope that we continue to make such good progress. Thank you. A little bit of self-promotion, because I work for myself and I don't have an employer. FYI, I'm writing a new book. It's my third book. It's going to be Hello Web Design, Teaching Design for Non-Designers, which could be interesting to a lot of people here. So if you're interested in that, the Kickstarter is going to start next week or January. I haven't decided yet. But hellowebdesignbook.com, there's a sign-up form if you're interested in my third self-published book. And then, obviously, Hello Web App.
Thank you very much, Tracy. I know Tracy will be here all weekend, and she would love to chat with you, discuss these issues with you. So we won't do a Q&A just now, but please definitely engage with her. I know she, obviously, as you can see, is so passionate about this. So just to let you know, we have about 15 minutes until the start of the first morning talk. So please stand up, stretch your legs. I don't know if there's any food left, but if there is. But please join me again in thanking Tracy for giving us a great kickoff to the start of the day. Thank you.